Pinkertons Ghosts is a horror anthology podcast by Superversive Radio, with no affiliation with any detective agency, person, real or imagined, or the dark forces of Outre Terre. It is not intended for children.
The main reason I'm alive right now? Pure, dumb luck. You hate to say it, but that's the God's honest truth, Control. If I hadn't glanced up out of my window at almost the exact second the armored van drove up outside of my house, I'd almost certainly be dead right now. But I did, and it gave me time to act. I had just pulled out the CD detailing the doppelganger's case, and something caught my eye outside the window, causing me to stop my report early. I jumped into Pinkerton mode. There was not a single doubt in my mind that this group, whatever group was in this armored van, was after me. I couldn't take any chances. This building was full of civilians. I didn't want to risk a shootout here if I could help it. And anyway, who knows how many people there were or what their level of expertise was. First priority was escape, get into hiding, then plan my move. The front door had to be out. No assumptions, I couldn't be seen. I thought through my other options. There were two more. In the back of the building, there was a fire escape I could make from a bedroom window. That was one possibility. I rejected it immediately. If I put myself into the shoes of my assailant, the fire escape is the first place I try and cover. I grabbed my bug-out bag and coat and made a beeline to my last option, the bathroom window. I wasn't on the first floor, but I kept an extending ladder in the bathroom for situations like this. The window overlooks an embankment that would provide me cover. It wasn't much, but it was a plan. It was dark out, probably about 8 p.m. That was plenty dark this time of the year, and the moon wasn't bright. It was bitterly cold, but at least it wasn't snowing. Cautiously, I crept over to my car, army crawling as much of the distance as I could. I tried to take stock of the people who had surrounded the apartment complex. It was difficult to see them in the darkness, but I counted 4 of them. As I'd suspected, they had one man guarding the fire escape with 2 others approaching the complex. One man stood outside the building, hands outstretched, fingers in some sort of gesture that couldn't be comfortable. I guessed he was probably a mage. Was this the work of the doppelganger? Almost certainly. Morgana wouldn't be so crass. Were these guys Grand Masons or mercenaries? Who knows? I knew they had to have serious firepower to have come so close to accomplishing the Pinkerton Purge. All academic. First thing is to get out of here, get in touch with some allies, and work on a counterattack plan. I crept over to my car, opened the door, then paused. Something wasn't right about my car. I couldn't put my finger on it exactly, but it looked and felt off. I took a step back and squinted at it. If I were in some sort of Masonic kill squad. Experimentally, I stuck my head underneath, then with a gulp withdrew my head again. Because plain as day, rigged and wired to the ignition system, was a bomb. If I'd turned the key, you'd be picking pieces of me out of the pavement, Control. I think this was the moment I realized how serious these guys were. Time for a plan B. The apartment complex was located next to one of those dime-a-dozen pizzerias that all seemed to be named Frank's. As quickly as I could, I sprinted over to the parking lot next to our building, where an old beat-up Honda motorcycle sat in front. The Honda was my emergency vehicle. I had struck a deal with Frank, actually a Hispanic man named Jose, so I could keep it in the parking lot for $50 a month. In the corner of my eye, I saw the front door of the apartment complex open. They must have finished their search. A flashlight started swinging around. I ignored them as I hopped onto my little Honda and desperately jammed the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered once, then died. Screwing my eyes shut, I turned again, praying that the engine would roar to life and at a moment where my heart stopped as the flashlight landed on me from my apartment complex. The Special Forces agents had seen me. But thank God the motorcycle came alive. With a roar, I practically skidded out onto the main road. I wasn't exactly an experienced motorcycle driver. I'd taken a couple of lessons, enough to get my license, but the idea behind the motorcycle was that it was emergency transportation, in case I needed to make a quick getaway. I was a little wobbly on it at first, but a motorcycle is, in the end, a type of bike. You never really forget. I took off down the back roads. The plan was to make it down to my hideout in the Pine Barrens, regroup there, get in touch with Control, the works. But of course, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I tried to make a call on my cell phone. I don't recommend trying this while riding a motorcycle in the night and on icy roads, but this was an emergency. Of course it didn't work, which could only mean one thing. The Special Forces agents weren't far behind me. The mage must be preventing phone calls. Sure enough, I heard the roar of a powerful engine come closer and closer behind me. In the side view mirror of the motorcycle, I saw the armored truck that had been parked out front getting closer. I admit to being impressed with the driver. For them to have caught up to me that quickly meant he must have had to do some fancy maneuvering around narrow roads. But I didn't have time to think about it, as I could see the barrel of a gun snake its way out the window and take aim. I was riding through a black road, thick trees on either side, trying to take a long way around to Route 78, which would take me deeper into New Jersey. I realized if I wanted to avoid the bullet hitting my back, I needed to make a move now. Without thinking it over or planning, I swerved suddenly, straight into a thicket of trees on the side of the dark road. I was just in time. I heard the gun go off behind me, narrowly missing me. I rode directly into the thicket of trees. Now, I was no trick rider, and this wasn't me trying to play the badass or anything. This was a desperation move, and I struggled to keep the bike upright as I swerved my way around tree after tree in the dark, my weak headlights barely illuminating in front of me. I needed to make my way to the main highway. I knew the armored truck would be able to catch up to me eventually, but the longer the lead, the better. I did not expect them to move this quickly. With a squeal of tires and a crash, impossibly, absurdly, I saw the headlights of the truck again behind me in my mirror. They crashed straight through the trees. It's not like it was an old-growth forest, but I could hear the mirror snap off its sides and branches smash against the hood. What the hell type of a truck was this? A tank? Or was it magic? Who knows? Who cares? I had to keep riding. I felt like I was swerving my way through the forest for hours, being whipped by twigs, but it was probably less than a minute when I burst my way through the trees. In front of me was a highway, mercifully light on cars, though not totally empty. Route 78. I jumped over a guardrail and swerved my way onto the road, causing a car to brake and slam on their horn. I ignored it and set out on the highway, speeding up at the limits of my engine. It wasn't long before I heard the truck enter the highway. There was a squealing of tires and a crunching sound, and through my peripheral vision I saw a car crash into a guardrail. I hoped nobody was hurt, but I couldn't do anything about that. My mind was on edge. I had to escape. The Honda was, in the end, not that fast. A more cynical man than me might accurately call it a piece of crap. My top speed couldn't have been that much higher than 85 miles per hour. And that armored truck was catching up to me a little too quickly. I could feel every foot it gained. I needed to do something desperate again to take a lead. Luckily, the highway was mostly empty, but I still found myself swerving in between cars. And behind me, I heard the squeal of tires as cars were forced to get out of the way of the armored truck barreling towards me. Ahead of me was a turn in the highway, a tiny diner sitting at the edge of it, and I felt my heart drop. I had two options. Slow down, make the turn, and assuredly get caught, or try to Tokyo drift around the curve like an action hero. Well, I thought to myself, might as well go out in a blaze of glory if I'm gonna go out. I couldn't think about it. I swung my bike around, skidding on the highway, trying desperately to keep it upright. And at that moment, a shot rang out, and that's when I knew it was over. My bike went out of control. The rear tire went spinning around, and I hung on for dear life until I finally slammed into the guardrail at the side of the highway. I was thrown off the bike and hit the ground hard. I felt a sharp pain explode throughout my entire body, then blackness. I woke up lying on a linoleum floor. Dim lights lit the room. Surrounding me were maybe 5 people. A middle-aged woman who appeared to be a waitress, a slightly overweight gentleman in some sort of uniform issued by a big-box retailer, clearly a trucker, a thin, slightly balding guy in a suit, and a man who was obviously the short-order cook. I blinked, my eyes adjusting to the light, my head pounding, and I heard someone, I think the trucker, who was kneeling next to me looking concerned, yell, "Hey, he's awake!" I tried to sit up, but the trucker pushed me back down gently. "Easy there, fella. You took a hell of a tumble. Not sure what happened, but you were coming into that turn at some speed, and your back tire went out. Must have hit a nail or something." Though everything hurt, I tried wiggling my fingers and toes, and to my relief felt everything move. I couldn't find my bug-out bag, though, but at least I didn't break my neck. I searched for something to say. Did you call an ambulance?" My mind was still hazy, and I was trying to recall why I had been driving that quickly. Something was nagging me. I knew it was urgent, but I couldn't quite remember why. It was bothering me. The clock said 8:15 p.m. This time, the man in the suit, I thought of him as the businessman, frowned. "Well, it's the damnedest thing, actually. I've been trying to call, but out of nowhere the reception totally died. Tried to use the diner Wi-Fi, but even that isn't working. Not sure why. Tried a couple of different phones, too." The waitress nodded in agreement. The businessman looked out the window. "You really did take one hell of a fall, stranger. I'm thinking I may go get help myself. At least drive out some distance where I can get reception and call the ambulance over." I felt like there was an important clue in the phones not working. I struggled to figure out what was so important when everything came rushing back to me. My eyes widened and I sat bolt upright, ignoring everyone's pleas to lie down. "Everybody in this room, get yourselves low to the ground. Right now. Do you understand me? Now." The chef spoke this time. Son, you might not be able to tell, but you've been bleeding like a stuck pig from the back of your head. Tied a rag around it to keep you from bleeding out, but maybe you ought to relax a little, huh?" I tried to stay calm, but my heart was pounding in my chest. "Listen to me. I am a professional detective, a private investigator. The reason I crashed is that there were men on my tail. You are all in serious danger, and you need to stay low if you want a chance of surviving the night. If your phones aren't working, those men aren't far behind." The truck driver crossed his arms and frowned at me. "Look, I understand you're hurt, but..." At that second, there was a loud crack. Mid-sentence, the truck driver dropped to the floor. Blood started oozing from his head. The waitress started to scream, but before she could let out more than a strangled cry, another shot rang out and she fell to the floor, dead. Her face was visible to me, her eyes open, her mouth screaming forever. The smell from the 2 dead humans hit me. The man now closest to me was the chef, who was watching everything with stunned silence. I tried to pull him to the ground next to me, but it was too late. With 2 more shots, the businessman and the chef were no more, and I was alone in the diner. I army crawled my way across the floor, ignoring my aching body and pounding head. Their blood, my blood, covered my front and back, head to toe. I took an account of myself. Anything to not think about the bodies, the people. Well, nothing was broken. I was just badly bruised and had a splitting headache. I managed to make my way behind the counter. This was a real short-order diner, classic style. All it had was a flat top in the back, a counter, and a few chairs to make some scrambled eggs for late-night drivers. I managed to make my way around the counter. I had some cover. I fumbled for the gun at my side and pulled it out. I had limited bullets, but just to make my position a little more stable, I fired in the direction of the bullet-riddled windows. This at least let my pursuers know they couldn't walk in on me. They had to take a strategic approach. I tried to think of a plan, not easy with my head pounding, my senses screaming at me. I tried some breathing exercises old Tom taught me. It helped me calm down. I could see the dead trucker from my position. His thick arms stuck into my hiding place. Rage built in me. I might not have fired the bullets, but they were, in the end, dead because of me. There was a debt here. I thought of something Jack had once said. Make them pay. I vowed that I would. But that meant this couldn't end here. If I was going to give myself a chance, I needed to make it to my turf, and that meant my hideout in the Pine Barrens. I needed a plan to get out of here. I focused my mind. There was an exit behind me. I didn't know if they were going to have it covered, but it's possible they just didn't know about it. If that was true, I had a slim chance of making it out of this alive. I saw shadows making their way to the front windows of the diner. Just 3 outlines in the darkness, and they kept themselves low, but they were lining up out of the window. I had no car, I had no motorcycle. Glanced through the small window in the doorway behind me, saw a small Honda parked to the left of the trucker's big rig. On the other side, I saw the armored truck that was following me. There was a small Mercy. It didn't look, at least at first glance, like anyone was by the door. This gave me an idea. I started dragging the bodies towards me. First was the trucker. When I stuck my arm out, a bullet landed next to my hand. I was forced to return fire to keep them honest. I dragged the trucker's corpse next to me and fished through his pockets until I found his keys. Next was the Honda. On the ground next to the chef were Honda keys that had fallen out of his pocket. I grabbed a spatula from the griddle behind me and used it to pull the keys towards myself without leaving cover. There hadn't been any gunfire in a while, and I expected the agents to make a move soon. Sure enough, something smashed through a window just as I crawled out the back. The grenade blew up something, a gas line or propane tank maybe, and I was nearly thrown from my feet. I powered on and pulled myself up the truck towards its cabin. I didn't have a lot of time. I threw myself into the truck and jammed the keys into the ignition. It roared to life, and I spun the wheel as hard as I could to the left, into the direction of the armored truck. Bullets shattered the windshield, but missed me by inches. I did not blink, and they scattered once again, and I'll never say it enough. Thank God. I took the spatula I had grabbed with me from the kitchen, jammed it onto the gas. I rolled out the other side of the truck and sprinted over to the small Honda. I hadn't watched my handiwork, but I could hear it. The truck accelerated and slammed into the armored truck with a crunch and a scream of metal. It pushed against it until something popped in the truck. I prayed to God it would be enough. I pulled out so fast you could smell the burning rubber on the ground, just as the Special Forces agents tried to regroup. And I was out of there, horribly bruised with a splitting headache and a rag tied to the back of my head, but alive and with a chance to get ahead of these agents. It wouldn't last forever. They would surely find me again. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. And when I thought of those dead bodies in the restaurant, I realized something. I didn't want it to be. It was time to make some bad guys pay. Sean Russo, signing off. For now.
Pinkerton's Ghosts is a podcast distributed by Superversive Radio, licensed under an attribution non-commercial, share-alike international license. This episode was written by Anthony Marchetta and is performed by the same. Ben Wheeler edits, directs, produces, and herds cats. Kid Dickerson performs our audio editing. Visit us on Facebook, read articles on superversivesf.com, or listen to us on unauthorized Acast, iTunes, or Spotify. Contact us through Twitter at @PinkertonsGhosts, email us at pinkertonsghosts@gmail.com, or send us noble messenger possums with messages strapped to their backs. Don't worry, they know how to find us. Thank you for listening. And good luck.